There's this American band which I'm very sure was popular when I was younger. Unfortunately, I didn't listen to them because being in Romania, I wasn't that immersed into American culture. But basically, they used to sing against the establishment. And back then, it was during the Bush era when the horse shit that the United States is going into Iraq in order to find weapons of mass destruction was being pushed heavily on the masses. You see, back then, the mainstream media didn't benefit from diversity officers and fact checkers. So the mainstream media was far less of a quality than it is today. Because now the American media is actively fighting against misinformation and disinformation. But back then, they were pushing the misinformation of the government that they're going into Iraq in order to give the indigenous people over there some democracy. And you had like various musicians and artists and people that were fighting against the system. And they were actively calling it into the lyrics of their song, like for example, Green Day used to. And they were saying that they're against this type of media brainwashing, that they are not part of this type of mentality that they called the American idiot. And the American idiot back then was the equivalent of a social justice activist. I like to call them piety warriors. The type of people that were using religion in order to justify oppressing other people, even other fellow Americans. And this bizarre notion of patriotism, where they would support the Patriot Act, where they would support the invasion of Iraq. And if you spoke against them, they would freak out. They would try to ostracize you. They would try to write a concerned citizen letter to your workplace. Those of you who are old enough to remember that probably do. And this is due to the fact that the internet wasn't as developed back then, the social media wasn't as prominent. So their attempt to cancel people was usually just them writing concerned citizen letters. But they were very obnoxious. I mean, they were the defenders of that particular culture. Um, now, when you have bands such as Green Day, I would never consider them to be punk rock. Like you got a lot of individuals claiming that these people were woke, and no, they were mainstream. There were other bands that I would consider to be punk rock, and those were bands that you wouldn't listen if your mother was there. Like basically the equivalent of edgy back then was kind of like going on 4chan today, right? Like imagine if you're in a corporate environment and the HR lady catches you browsing 4chan, especially like if you're browsing Pol, right? That would be considered the equivalent of counterculture back then. That was the equivalent of punk rock. No, these people were the Reddit of their times. I mean, they were mainstream. Sure, they spoke against the Bush era, but I would not consider them to be incredibly edgy. What is interesting, though, is that they performed on the New Year's Eve and they decided to change one line from their song. They didn't change the homophobic slur in their song. Like they used the words bundle of sticks in a way that would get me into trouble on YouTube, right? They didn't change that. Like that apparently is still fine. No, they decided to change the redneck culture and they replaced it with MAGA culture. And this is what I like to say that it is safe edgy, right? Like back during the Bush era when they were talking about the subjects that they were talking about, that they were singing, the songs that they were singing, it could land you into trouble. Although some would argue that even then it wouldn't, because again, like they were mainstream, like they were played on the radio, they were commercial album, like there was no risk of them singing what they were singing. They weren't being persecuted for their songs. Today, however, I mean, we see what's happening with Dave Chappelle. Like, the government isn't persecuting you, but, look what happened to Kanye West. Like, there are certain opinions and certain things that if you say today, you get canceled from social media. Like, your music isn't allowed to be hosted on any social media website. You will have other businesses that refuses to deal with you. You'll have banks that may cancel your accounts. You have PayPal that can deplatform you, right? So like that would mean to actually be edgy today. Like if you do any of these things that put you at risk with any of the big companies, with the big corporations, then I would say, yeah, that's edgy. But like if you're just going to sing a song where you have a couple of slurs, but then you go, oh, well, I'm going to say that this song is about MAGA, actually. Because I am so edgy. It's like, who fucking cares? The people in MAGA do not have any institutional power. They're not going to cancel you. You're not going to be unable to host your video on social media because you spoke against MAGA. And, the song doesn't even fit anymore. Because back then, yeah, like the people you were singing were on the side of the mainstream media. They were on the side of censorship. They were pro-war. Like the song made sense back then. But today, if you're saying MAGA, like the people from MAGA, they don't want war. Like if anything, even Donald Trump is saying that he wants America first, like he doesn't want any more foreign conflicts. So your song just doesn't make sense anymore. The mainstream media isn't supporting Donald Trump. I mean, maybe Fox News is. I don't know. I haven't listened to them, but CNN isn't. MSNBC isn't. Right? So like the song just doesn't make any more sense anymore. And this is the point, right? It's not about making sense. This is why art and American entertainment specifically is in a downward spiral. I do believe that we are living in the dark age of American culture. Nothing that America is producing right now is going to be memorable in the next 5 or 10 years. Everything is dated. Everything ages like sour milk. It is sad, is what I get to say. And this is why people are upset, right? And also people are upset of being spat on constantly, right? Like this is the biggest problem. Back in the day, you could go to a concert, even if it was a leftist concert, and you could still enjoy it because they weren't spitting on you directly. Like, even if you're a redneck, right, and you would go and you would listen to one of these songs, you could say, well, they're not talking about me, right? But now, like, they're going out of their way in order to insult people. It's like, oh, you're a right-winger? Well, hold on a little bit. I'm going to insult you right now. And they're doing it because it's safe. Because if you insult the left, you get the platform. Like if you insult the left, PayPal stops doing business with you. The whole shebang. If you insult the right, like, what can happen? And this is why they were so upset when Bud Light had its comeuppance. Because they didn't expect that. It's like, what do you mean the right-wingers are finally putting up a fight? No, they're like that kid that gets bullied in class, isn't it? Right? Like they're the little kid that when you have a bad day, you bully him a little bit, that cheers you up. Well, apparently, it turns out that they're not going to be that little kid anymore, and they stood up for themselves. And what happened to Bud Light, hopefully, is going to happen to many other companies that go out of their way just to be spiteful. To say that, oh, our customers, they're fratty, out of touch. Like when you say that, yeah, you deserve to not have them. If you don't like your customer, if you don't appreciate them, then don't have it. In the case of Green Day, I don't think that they're going to get much backlash for this, simply due to the fact that I don't know if their audience happens to be right-wing. But surely they must have had a couple of right-wingers in their audience that vote MAGA. And the question is, if you're one of those people, are you going to use your money in order to support them, to do propaganda for the opposite side? Because that's what happens. Like you may as well donate to the Democrats whenever you purchase an album from these people. Like that's your statement. You're basically like supporting the Democrat Party every single time you buy from them. Let me know what you guys think. And as usual, I will see you in the comment section. Take care.